Happy New Year! And I got a new place.
It looks great. I love the wooden design.
Yeah, me too.
It's it looks like you have a studio now. You've got your workbench, you've got your shelves. Things
I
are not a horrible mess.
I need to work on
Looks
that.
great.
The shelf, the mess is off screen.
Yeah, you showed me some before.
Yeah,
I don't want to see what your desk looks like. I'm really hoping that there's an improvement there.
I got a smaller desk, so there wouldn't be room for mess.
Mm, Yeah, but you're still just going to use every inch of the space, aren't you?
There's not much beyond mouse space, and there's like
Oh, well,
that much
there you go.
behind the computer. Yeah,
Well,
but
yeah,
I've got
it's something you can't.
shelves.
You really are an engineer. You're super practical. I have a bench. I need to put things on it. Every inch of space should be used.
Well,
And
the
then,
plan.
me being the aesthetic person is the complete
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah.
It's
I'm
like,
actually
this is a
planning to
beautiful
keep this
bench.
empty
It should be.
because this is going to be the working space. This is where I put the thing I'm
Mm,
working on, and then I put it away.
and then you put it away. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll give you a massive, I feel like a sense of hygiene almost.
yeah, yeah. It's like the lounge is
Yeah.
still a mess of boxes because I'm trying to put things in the right place and get rid of what I don't need.
Mm.
Like I've got I just
It's a
gave a
really hard process,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah,
slow.
people sort of think it's easy, but if you want to do it right, because you have to go deep on what is the purpose of everything that
Hmm.
I have and my life. And then that comes into like, what is the purpose of
Hmm.
this room for me? What is the purpose of my life in this house? It can get pretty deep. And these things are not, oh, I think it'd look nice there.
Yeah, yeah. Like I just gave a banana box full of books to the secondhand bookstore. It's like a friend gave me a bunch of the Ender's Game books, and it's like,
Mm,
okay, I haven't looked at them since he gave them to me. I'll pass them on and so on. And I've got a box of stuff to put on the free table at the Ham Radio Club. I'm going to be giving away a box of kitchen stuff because I got double ups and so on. And yeah, it's like one step at a time.
I like a good purge of things. Something, I don't know, I feel cleaner when I've
Hmm.
gotten rid of a bunch of stuff. I just emptied out my garage recently. It was like 50, 60 boxes of stuff. It's all gone
Hmm.
now. It's completely empty in there, and I love it. I don't know why. It's that quote about the things you own owning you.
Hmm.
You're weighed by them.
Yeah.
You
One
don't need to keep the things.
one realization that did occur to me as I was going through this moving was there are certain avenues of advancement that are closed to me because of my life circumstances, as in I can't save more money because of being on the sole parent benefit and so on. But at the same time, there will always be avenues of advancement that are closed to me. There will never be an infinite option set for me. Um, just um, and there are many avenues of advancement open to me that are closed to many people. Like I've got through a combination of thriftiness and good planning and various things, I have disposable income and I can do things with that and I can get a nice house and arrange it and indulge in hobbies and so on. And I have avenues of advancement still open to me and sort of use what I have rather than bemoaning what I don't.
Yeah, it may not be specifically the financial side, which is interesting for your character too. Which I
Mm,
think is interesting. If you were to make a bet on where all your time and attention would be on that, given what we've talked about. But you're sort of forced to develop in other ways
yeah,
because that's not open to you.
which seems very
And
poetic. Why is that volume not higher?
yeah, and you have to spend money to do it too,
Hmm.
because if you were to save as thriftily as you would like, you would end up in a situation where you're punished
Hmm.
effectively, or not optimal. There's a better way of doing it, which I think is what you're doing. It's like investing into a house like this.
Yeah.
It's a good chunk of money is going to rent there. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I think it's over half my income going to rent.
the
Yeah.
status increase alone is pretty good.
Yeah.
You can't sneeze at that.
That's true. Um, oh, yeah, it's certainly a better life to bring someone into.
Mm. And it's more than just. I feel like that comment sounded more hollow than I meant it.
Status increase. Climbing my own ladder.
Yeah, we view it as a game that's all display and no purpose. A lot of people, but you have to think about it as training your perception of yourself. There's a difference between I have the nice house because it impresses other people, and internally the thought of I'm worth having a nice house. That slum that I was in before is beneath me. Yes, I could live there and I could save more money, but it's like treating yourself with respect.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is a place that is more suited to me because I am worthy of it.
Yeah, there are a lot of things about this new house that, like, the carpet's relatively new. It's new enough that it retains imprints of the boxes I've put on it or the furniture I put on it for a few days.
Oh
And then
wow.
I move it and it's like, oh, it's a bit fluffy. Whereas the old carpet at the old place, it was getting bald patches from ants.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one of those. My carpet's pretty rough.
Yeah.
I'm sort of not bothering cleaning it at this point. It was pretty bad before we got here. I think it's been like 6 or 7 families with all the kids on this carpet, and some unsavory substances as well, and it's
Yeah.
just polka dot everywhere, and it
Yeah.
wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. But what else? Quick stuff to get through before we go on to the world
Well,
at large.
it's been a while since we've done this. It's been a few weeks. We sort of had a impromptu Christmas New Year's break.
How's the new baby?
Crying at the moment. I can hear her in the other room. I don't know if you can.
No.
No, okay. She's doing well. She's 6 weeks now, something like that. Goes very quickly. Starting to sleep longer, which is nice. Not that makes a big deal of difference to me. I've been sleeping in a different room because I don't want to have my sleep ruined. Advantages of a big house, I suppose. No health dramas, nothing like that. There's been a few non-ideal things here and there, but how perfect can you really ask for things to be?
Oh yeah.
You just gotta, take the world as you have it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've been having a bit of a weird day. I've been just come back from holiday from work, which was I just sat in the house and played video games effectively for a week. Wasted all my time doing nothing. Which was probably necessary. I'm not going to beat myself up for it too much. But I've had this real sense today of it would have been better spent literally doing nothing. I've had a real call to like sit.
It's better to relax
and
than waste time.
No, like I enjoy the relaxing. I don't know. I've just had a sense of wanting to like sit and look outside and not do anything
I say
for a
that because
long period of time.
I've been when I moved in for the first couple of days, I couldn't get the internet working. Turned out I'd plugged something into the wrong hole, but that forced me to not have YouTube, and it was like the realization of it's better to sit there and do nothing, give your brain a break, than actively
Mm.
waste time. And you trick
Yeah.
yourself into thinking you're doing something useful, but then scrolling YouTube is not useful.
No, I do my very best to avoid scrolling anything.
Hmm.
I have, es- yeah, YouTube's the only thing that even remotely gets me, and
Hmm.
I do my best to not go on it for that reason. But I don't know, I've just had this playing around in my head that we live such high input lives
Hmm.
that every second of every day we want to be jamming noise or information or stimulation into our brain because we can effectively. And I don't know, we've lost the benefit of silence or boredom
Hmm.
because these things are things that we've eliminated. And as far as I'm concerned, they have benefits, which is an issue. And then there's that other thing of you sort of running from yourself. If you can't sit or do anything without having input, music, podcasts, whatever, I think particularly the type of people who listen to shows like this are going to be in that category of just wanting to keep the engine running all day, every day, all the input possible. How do you know who you are if all of your time is spent with information coming into the system? All of
Hmm.
your attention, all of your attention, which, as far as I'm concerned, is you, is spent externally. What
Hmm.
is this thing I'm listening to? What is this thing I'm watching?
I think
You
that
know, what would
segues
happen?
to what I said before we started recording about the idea of there being a external idealized image that you're trying to aim towards, like the idea of masculinity, and realizing I am not man, right? The abstract end of that bell curve or that side of the yin yang, whatever. I am not that abstract. I am me, and I have, as an individual, some feminine aspects and some aspects that aren't really on that scale, and as everyone does. And so it's like, okay, there's idealized man, masculine, and then there's idealized me. And if you're always focused on something else and following something else or being stimulated by something else, then you don't even necessarily know who the you're trying to optimize is.
You get lost in the images that you follow that that pull you.
Monkey see, monkey
Yet,
do.
you know, yeah, you can get very caught up in say trendy ideas.
Hmm.
You particularly people these days, and I imagine people who would stumble across this would have come across the sort of, I don't know, I think it's like the Sigma male thing is a great
Hmm.
example. Is that they're forming this identity around this sort of meme, and you can get very wrapped up into, you know, am I this person trying to be like this? Oh, I need to have, you know, 5 side gigs, and I need to be doing the cold plunge and getting up at this time and behaving this way towards women. It's like, okay, you're being captured by an idea. You're being possessed effectively by the spirit of this thing. And, you know, you may want to be more like that, and that's got its benefits, but if it's possession, it's not you.
But it's not
You're
necessarily
not doing that
bad.
thing.
It can be better than the alternative. It can be a step.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a complicated one.
It's like you don't tell children, okay, you don't say to children, go and invent your own language. You say, here is a language, learn it. You say, don't go invent your
Yeah.
own mathematics. You say, here is maths, learn it. And you try and make it fun and so on, but you need to learn other things before you can construct your own. Like those being seized by those ideas It's like that means there's something within that idea that is attracting something within you. It's a
Yeah,
magnetism.
you're still chasing a star,
Mm,
um, even if it may be, you're off the mark.
mm,
That idea of like, okay, this is still progress. I suppose it's good, but I think it's certainly not optimal. There's a lack of awareness within it.
mm,
It's very monkey see, monkey do.
mm,
I see people on social media who are doing this thing and behaving this way, and they say that's like what a true man should be, so I'm gonna do that. And then you have the demon in your head that's going, you know, true men would do this, wimps would do that, or whatever. That's not you. Now, it may be a helpful. There are certainly worse ideas to be possessed by, that's
mm.
for sure. Being possessed by that idea may improve your life trajectory, but it is not the end state
This,
because
no,
it's not individualized. It's not self-reflective.
I
It's not
definitely,
you. Like, it's different. I'm watching the thing.
mm,
I'm getting influenced by what's coming through the screen.
mm,
Is different from sitting and thinking, not having input for an hour and deciding I want to embody these parts of this idea.
mm,
It's I think I'm trying to distinguish the idea of reaction versus like premeditated action.
mm. But then I'm trying to incorporate into it differences in individual stage and state. Like, I'm thinking of Elon Musk's description of his own mind as being like in a storm, or like being in a storm. And different people's mental landscape, to speak very vaguely and broadly, is differently optimized, differently organized, and differently focused. Um,
Mm,
like someone whose focuses are not intellectual. The crude way would be to say they have a lower IQ because of the particular things that that's measuring. But that's a very, very crude measure. And it's not really useful for this, I feel. But the someone who has enough stuff bubbling up inside their head to completely fill out a self-image isn't necessarily someone who's taking all the lessons in from outside. Like you can't fill a cup that's already full. The martial arts metaphor you see in kung fu type movies. Um, Empty your cup so you can learn. Uh, if you already have that, you can't draw in the wisdom that's around you. And a lot of people focus on just get the thing done, not on reevaluating the thing itself. And if you're just focused on getting the thing done, you'll probably do that faster and more efficiently than the guy who's constantly reevaluating.
I can see that.
And so people who don't really care about all that introspection, don't have any draw towards it, will just be seized by a set of ideas. It might be the set that they grew up with or whatever, but they don't feel that need to introspect. They just take that identity set and say, "Oh, that's me. I'll do it," and they don't care. And
Well, it's certainly more comfortable.
yeah, yeah, and
If,
then
if if you can't stand being alone with your own thoughts, it's very easily to
mm,
wind up becoming someone that you didn't intend to be because you just sort of accepted the identities that were influencing you.
I think the key thing it's I had it.
I can
No,
see
it
a
ran away.
trajectory to this. Like, I think where
Hmm.
you're going was sort of a trajectory
Hmm.
of what might be most ideal for someone starting from a very low place isn't the introspection route.
Hmm. You need some data to
Intro-
introspect with.
Yes, and introspecting when you're not in a great place can be very destructive.
Mm.
There's certainly a case to be made that being captured by one of these ideas that drags you out of the muck first, and then coming upon introspection later, and being intentional is you could say that being captured by that idea was good.
Mm.
Yeah, it very easily becomes a to who, when, why, and what. The devil's in the
Mm.
details of how this would apply. It's interesting that you brought up Elon Musk. It's just I think his ex-wife did a TED talk, which was very interesting.
Oh, I should watch
And
that.
she had a comment about him that's really stuck with me. I think even more than the "mind is a storm" comment,
Mm.
which was visionaries don't tell stories; they are the story.
Mm. It's not a
We look at
choice.
these people.
You don't
Yeah,
get
we
to
look at
not
these
do it.
people,
Yeah.
and they're not out there telling a story that we accept and listen to. You know, that's a preacher.
Mm. And the stories
We
get
look at
told about them.
yes, yeah. There are people who tell stories, but a visionary is someone who is embodying a story that hasn't been said yet, and that's why they capture our attention. And for me, that filled in the puzzle of um, the stages of humans accumulating knowledge.
Mm.
When we had the action, action, is it no, not intimidation, the other word. Uh,
Imagination.
no, when you intimate, no,
Integrate.
no, when you copy someone.
Imitate.
Yes, imitate. Thank you. Action, imitation, representation in story, and then representation in like scientific or psychological statements. And I feel like the action part is what was hit on in that statement,
Mm.
that the visionary isn't the story, but they're not telling the story, they are the story. And then people imitate the story that they were. And then someone comes along and goes, I can tell the story of that person. And then
Mm.
bang, you have the story. Comes myth, and then later on you get the extraction
Because he's
of
primed for becoming a myth in a couple of hundred years.
fuck yeah. Depends. Yeah, it really depends on what happens in technology, eh? But he's certainly a mythical figure, I think.
Mm.
Just the scale and the reach of his, like Steve Jobs is a great example of this.
Mm.
People think of Jobs, they don't think of the facts that they know about his life because few people actually know facts about his life. They think of the ideas that we've associated with him, which means it's a story, a myth figure.
Mm. Oh yeah.
It just really strikes me as I keep trying to come back to the what is the idea behind the ideas
Mm.
that everyone argues on the surface level, and that there's always something behind the scenes. Um, you'll always be outside the conversation, but you have a chance to usurps the word that's coming to mind, but it's not right. Transcend, I suppose.
Mm. Because you're trying to
You can
integrate the
argue,
existing story and integrate new stories into
yeah,
that.
yeah. There's always an argument. There's always clashing stories and ideas,
But,
and we seem to have this belief in the modern world that one side is right and the other is wrong.
mm.
And I don't think that there would be an argument between two sides of anything if that was the case.
Mm.
I don't think that's what the process is for.
Because, like you were suggesting before we started recording, when I was like, "Stop, we need to record." Um, the thought that came into my head as you were saying that was, if you have these 2 points of view and the argument is which one is right. Oh, what is it? I've heard this described as a philosophical binary. It's like, okay, here's two choices. And you look at it, it's like, okay, two choices. I take option three. Like, you've got the two choices, which from one perspective are basically the same, and from another perspective are totally opposed, and so on. And then you say, okay, here's a third option that combines aspects of those two, and I integrate that, and then someone else will do their own integration of it, and so on. And eventually you get enough of a cohesive landscape. It's like you have one point in a multi-dimensional space, and you have another point in a multi-dimensional space, and you know data about both of these points. And then you slowly gather more data points until eventually you get this landscape and you see, that's the highest point. Neither of them were the highest point. That's the highest. And then you reevaluate and say, okay, but that's the coldest. And so on. And so it's a multi-generational ongoing process. And I think that we've
Yes.
got so many perspectives and so many ideas in our current society that I'm relating this back to the Cycle of Civilizations that I've read that Oswald Spengler wrote about. So secondhand from him, but I think good descriptions that at this stage in a civilization cycle, we're entering the age of memory where all the stuff's been done and more stuff's of course happening, but a great deal has been done, and now we are filtering it down and picking out the valuable bits and working out what's worth carrying forward and what doesn't give enough value to make it worth carrying forward.
Yeah, we've come to a place where there's too many voices, and we need to start trimming down and picking out what's valuable. Or we'll drown in the sea of chaos. Because this is the thing with the internet, particularly, we've opened up the landscape of discussion. Like when you're talking about the 2 points before, my on the spot analogy reaction was, we have an issue. There's something that's bothering people, and people come to different conclusions about it. And we like to tell ourselves in the modern world that that's because the people like me are smart and the people like them are dumb. And then we bicker amongst ourselves about how the other guys are bad. And, oh, look, they did that thing. But
I'm just thinking AI in the sense of there was a clip I saw from a Joe Rogan podcast where someone was saying pre-2017 or something, they had no fear about AI at all because it was basically dumb.
Yes.
And
yes,
then
I did watch that, and then I went and watched the whole thing. It's a very good episode.
Yeah.
Front to back.
Is that the one you sent me the link to?
I think so.
Okay,
yes.
I
saw that clip and went, oh, I need to watch these guys.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the quote that they changed to a system where the more computing power you gave it and the more information you gave it, the better it got. So you didn't have to understand it, you just had to feed it. And they were getting something to write Amazon reviews, not as a training exercise. Like, okay, how would you write an Amazon review? And they found one of the simulated neurons was simulating the attitude of the person, like the value of that particular neuron in a numerical sense was a measure
how can you predict
rating.
language without predicting behavior? And how can you predict behavior without understanding it?
Yeah. And like they'd never taught ChatGPT chemistry, but it can answer chemistry questions.
You can write chemistry papers.
Yeah.
You can write programs that do chemistry math.
Yeah, so if you take that sort of compounded knowledge and get it to produce the arguments and counter arguments for different points and use it as a tool in that synthesis of ideas, like
Sorry, I just had the thought of collective versus distributed thinking. I wonder if that might actually be a downfall of the system.
As in, it has
Perhaps
one
in,
winner idea.
yeah, because it's one thing. Like, yeah, it
Hmm.
can have all the input in the world, but it is not a distributed system. Because
But
we are a distributed system.
there's open source AI now. Like I've seen several videos about
Yeah,
here's how to make your own uncensored AI to do whatever the hell you want. Here's
yeah, but
various
the
half finished
question is,
versions.
like,
Here's blank and
how are they going to interact?
mm,
We'll put the AI thing aside for a second,
yeah.
and I'll explain why. Because as far as I'm concerned, that might as well be a new life form.
Mm,
Because of the way we don't know how it's going to interact with itself or with us or with other AI.
mm,
And the most important thing about human beings is our social interactions.
yeah. Yeah, those are
Um,
some massive unknowns.
which is where I was going before with the idea of you have an issue and you have perspectives on the issue. And we like to think that one is right and one is wrong, but the reality is that you have different perspectives on the issue because human beings have different personality proclivities and temperaments. And we evolved these different personality proclivities and temperaments to detect for certain problems in the environment. And these problems are opposing problems. So the only way forward to survive was to balance opposing tensions. And they weren't going to get a single integrated system to come up with the right answer as the computation was too much, which is why we have different personalities, each sensitive to different things. Between humans, I'm not talking about NPD. This is a distributed thinking system for the species, not just individuals being their individual self and having their individual thought. This is an evolved system for solving problems. We're a distributed hive mind, completely isolated and yet completely connected,
Hmm.
which is what the collective unconscious means. That we are joined, whether we like to think it or not. We're in this modern state with the internet where the hive itself is billions big now, not just
We don't know how to handle
not
that.
just what's in your local town and communication via walking or like maybe at the most horses in terms of our evolution. And now all of a sudden we have instant communication to billions of minds all playing this same balancing act game. Um, I imagine there's many emergent dangers about, say, balances on each side. Analogy of increased force with push and pull with more people. But where I was going with the original bit was whatever the issue is, we have these different perspectives that are all pulling and pulling to try and find the point. And their points, their individual point may be way off in a far field, but that doesn't mean that they're right. None of them are. The compromise is. The compromise is the right answer, not one side or the other or any person themselves having an individual perspective. And I feel that there needs to be an emphasis on focusing on not just compromises that make everyone miserable, but some version of it that make everyone happy. Solving the problem behind the problem. The only example I have off the top of my head was a thing Peterson hit on a long time ago, which has always stuck with me, which was the abortion debate. And his point was, it's the argument isn't about abortion. The argument is about how we treat sex and what place sex has in the modern culture. But no one's talking about that in terms of the argument. They'll argue about the downstream effects of what happens when you have a culture as ours is behave in the way it does around that issue. And there's people talking about that, but they're not connected.
Mm.
And when people are asked about their opinion on abortion, they don't say, I think we need to rethink societal norms around sexual interaction. They say for, against, oh, it's okay in this circumstance, it's okay in that one, and then they argue about details. Not intentionally, but I think people are always talking past each other because of this as well. Because they're different temperaments, which means literally different perspectives on the world. And one is talking about a thing that's completely different to the other, but it's somehow mangled into the same argument.
Mm.
You know, I care about environmental degradation, and I care about not making human beings poor, is an argument about climate change. And the two sides think they're arguing about the same thing, but they're not.
Mm.
Gun rights, I think, is a great example of two opposing perspectives that really have nothing to do with each other. And they just happen to be clashing. And there's the reason why they can't have any compromise, because what they actually want is very different. Almost topics. And I mean, with that one in particular, it seems to me that this technology is going to answer that for us.
Because people will just 3D print them.
Well, yeah, it's not a question about do you want guns around or not. The question is, can you trust human beings with tools? Can you trust human beings? Pointless. Period. Or are we so dangerous that we can't be trusted and must be shackled and neutered?
Because guns are force multipliers, they're not value judgments. Like a hammer is a force multiplier, a knife is a force multiplier.
AI is a force multiplier.
Mm. And it's like humans being the
all you need
tool
to
using
do-
ape, saying, can we trust...
All you need to do is take it to extreme, and then you can see the point. Like, Tim Cast used to talk all the time about the Second Amendment should allow me to keep a tactical nuclear weapon. And it should, but that's beside the point.
Mm.
The point is, what gun control is really about is, can you trust humans or not?
Mm.
And, you know, some kind of magical thing where the system that governs humans is not run by humans. Whatever. Take it to its extreme.
Yeah.
I believe people should be able to have guns. It's like, okay, do you think every human being on the planet should be able to have a nuclear weapon?
No.
No. Like, okay,
Yeah.
then. So, can't be trusted. We can't hang the fate of the world on a single person. Okay, what can you hang on a single person? Fate of a neighborhood? Fate of one other person? Or maybe a group? Where's the line?
Mm.
What can an individual human being be allowed to be trusted with? And what can't they? That's the question. And I think we're going to run into it real hard real soon, because, okay, we might not be able to get our hands on a nuclear weapon to do danger with, but DNA printers. I'll just print me up a smallpox vaccine, a smallpox virus with like 95% lethality and the most transmissible thing you've ever seen, and just out you go. And I can just do that from home on my desk. All of humanity gone in an afternoon. Can you trust human beings with that? Your answer was no, and I don't disagree, but I'm just doing my best to not put stakes in the ground at this point on anything.
So if we look at
when you take it to its extreme, you find out what it's about.
Mm.
And AI is going to be the same thing.
Oh,
We're all going to have that in our pocket. And by damn, is it going to be a weapon? Can we be trusted with it?
I'm still on the gun control issue behind the issue. Like that's.
Yep.
I'm just thinking about the
tell me what you're thinking.
Perspectives on it. Like, if we look at the way people act rather than what they say, the equivalent to the gun control arguments acted out in other spheres through the lens of what can we trust people to do, the nanny state, the we must regulate everything, fill in all the paperwork, get an inspector in to sign it off, Child, Youth and Family Protective Services, whatever it's called in whatever country, knocking on the door of the parents who wouldn't transition their child, that's you're not trusted. Authority in the abstract must have that power instead, because authority is right.
Yeah.
There's more to explore in that one. The other side...
There's a lot there, yeah. That's a hell of an assumption, yeah.
Yeah. The other side is the... like the number of people that we trust to one person almost universally is a family, right? One person driving a 5-person car. Right?
There's probably a good reason for that.
Yeah. And then if you want to drive a bus, you need a different license. You need some level of training. If you want to protect your family, in the pro side of the gun control debate, that's having authority, having power, having sufficient force multiplier to take out that many people, approximately. Like that's the single person multiplication factor that society deems acceptable. Right? One person with a whole bunch of machine guns, people start to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a question of where should trust be placed in a authority figure who rules over all, hypothetically equally, or in individuals to sort out their own problems.
Knowing that some will go off the rails with it, and that's inevitable.
Yeah, it's a question of the gun control people who are pro gun control. Yeah, see, it's another one of those terms that's a loaded term. Pro gun banning, something like that.
Yeah.
They're pro authority. They're like, no, the authorities can be trusted. We just need to, give over our autonomy to a certain amount, our personal responsibility to a certain amount, over to them, and they will keep us safe and arbitrate between issues. Fair enough. I can see arguments there. And then the other side is like, no, they can't be trusted. I trust me more than I trust them.
Or I trust my neighbour more than I trust the government.
Most people. Yeah, maybe. Or at least if something happens with the neighbour, I can trust myself to do something about it.
Well, there was a thing I saw, a comedian who went to a gun rally. And he was from somewhere, based on the way he was talking, was from somewhere that was more pro-gun and pro-gun control. And so that's the attitude he had in his head. And he thought, oh, what would happen if someone started going nuts with a gun here? Oh, he'd be riddled with bullets in about 5 seconds. Oh, we should have more guns. Oh God, what did I just think? And it's like...
Yeah, like the, what was it, the Draw Muhammad contest at a local gun range in Texas. and some guys, some Islamists, rocked up to wreck the place and didn't get out of their car before it was over.
Oh,
Like,
God.
they were invited effectively, but the point of, the question is, are there more good people than bad people? Because if there are more good people than bad people, and the good people and the bad people have guns, then it'll generally work out well in the good people's favor, but with risk. And
Oh.
if you think no, there's more bad people than good people, then to have a outside authority strip everyone of everything and then deal with things could, yeah, it's difficult because I am of the perspective of the other side, although I have a foot in both camps. There's a thing I wanted to bring up about this is that you can generalize it out to the difference. I think one of the most fundamental differences between left wing and right wing people. And I think it is identification with the victim. In any given hypothetical problem, the left wing person sees themselves as the victim. They associate themselves with the downtrodden person. And the right wing person, not as the perpetrator, they don't identify as the perpetrator, but they identify as the victor. So perhaps winner and loser is a better word set. That a left wing person will think of the loser in the situation and go, I'm like that person. We need to protect that person. And the right wing person will think of the winner in that situation and go, I'm like that person. That person should get rewarded for winning.
I'm just thinking of it in a narrative sense in terms of the stories that we tell ourselves as a society, particularly in movies. Like, if you think of, first off, can we trust other people with weapons and guns and force multipliers like that? You look at how many movies there are where, in some cowboy western type thing, and I think one of the most recent would be that Yellowstone documentary, basically based around a ranch in Yellowstone area where there's lots of guns and lots of people doing stuff with guns and threatening each other with guns and so on. And the idea that half the arguments are resolved with two people pointing guns at each other. And it's like, I will kill you. No, I will kill you. And it's like, these aren't rational human beings acting rationally. These are actors playing to a script that's meant to play things up and bring out the drama. But the idea that that's the association of how people act with guns in the minds of a lot of people, seeing that as the expected result of there being guns around, and also that impression of if anyone has power over you, they are more likely to take advantage of you than anything else. Like, oh, where did...
Except the ones with all the power.
There's a God complex thing there.
There's an issue with, this has always been my issue with the gun control thing, and I'm going to end up throwing my lot in with one side, but the issue I see with the left-wing side of the argument is they say, I can't trust my neighbors with the guns because they might hurt me, because if they have power over me, they might abuse it. But if they don't have any guns and the government has all the guns, well, they're trustworthy. I can trust them.
Yeah, sure.
They'll just give them all the power over me, and then I'll be safe because they'll be nice. It's like, okay, it's been mostly that way for a little while. I can see that argument, but I know I'm trying to think of a criticism for the other side to balance out my definitely not fence sitting.
It looks like normally works, sometimes really, really doesn't. Normally has a lot of issues, sometimes it's absolutely essential.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's what is it? Playing for the margins? Is that the term?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that, but it's a case of which era you pick. Do you pick the constant small on a population scale era, or do you pick the um, sometimes
Oh,
bad era?
it's a weighting problem.
Hmm.
It's a weighting problem. The left wing types don't weight the potential catastrophic downside of the system going corrupt with all of the power and abusing them all. They don't weight that as highly as they weight the immediate potential danger of their neighbor going a little nuts with his gun.
Or the bullied kids shooting up the school.
Yeah,
Or
they
yeah,
weight the.
it's like how much do you
Yeah, I
trust
don't want to. I don't
the
want to talk about
nuttiest
the school
villager?
shootings thing because that's.
More complex.
Yeah, you're getting into the
Hmm.
culture influencing things problem.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a weighting problem. The right wing people are more tolerant of the immediate lower risk. What's the word? You've got high risk of happening. So what probability? And then you've got risk of it being a catastrophe.
Hmm.
And on the left wing side, they are not okay with a high probability of the low risk outcome happening, and they are happy to have the trade off because everything's a trade off of having the absolutely catastrophic outcome that is a low probability be be catastrophic.
I'm thinking of it as a risk
They,
matrix. Like, have you seen in risk analysis in workplaces, they've got the impact and likelihood, and if it's
yes, yeah,
very low
that's
to
what I'm
vanish,
talking about.
yeah, vanishingly low likelihood, but massive impact.
But yeah, a
Yeah.
catastrophic failure
Mm.
to the right wing person, it doesn't matter how unlikely it is.
Mm.
If it is 100% total collapse catastrophic, it can't be allowed on the table. Whereas the left wing person seems to be like, no, that's okay because it's so unlikely, as long as the rest of the table is more positive.
I think that there's a perception that the probability of the catastrophe can be reduced to zero. Like, oh, it's a really
Yeah,
low catastrophe probability, and we can make it better. Like that extra 1% that pushes it over into zero. That perception
yeah,
of humans being able to solve the problem completely. It's a trust in the authority, the intellectuals,
yeah.
the
They trust
rules.
in the system enough that they
Hmm.
don't think that absolutely 100% collapse possibility is actually possible.
Hmm.
They see it only as the short term issue, whereas I think the right leaning people look at that and go, okay, yeah, I get your point, but there's this catastrophic outcome.
Hmm.
And the left wing people say there's no catastrophic outcome.
And you're just being
And I was
alarmist
like,
and so on. And what's your
yeah, what's the
real
real motive?
motive?
Because you
Yeah.
want to just do the short term thing. And
Hmm.
then obviously you can argue about who's right on the data in terms of the short term thing anyway.
Hmm.
But that's sort of beside the point. It's just trying to hit home that idea of
No one's
people
right.
talk past each other
Hmm.
because we have different perspectives and we evolved these different perspectives to work through problems. Each side is sensitive to a different thing for a different reason. And the answer isn't one or the other. And it also doesn't seem to be a compromise. It seems to be something that comes and changes it later. And I don't have a good example of that because I think I'm pulling at the edge of knowledge, period. But The best answer, the best example I can think of is like technology coming and changing things, but that doesn't really work in terms of the story. It needs to be a cultural change that
Hmm.
that changes the problem. In your civilization's collapse thing that you keep mentioning, it reminds me of the like return to modesty phase.
Hmm.
But then again, that's sort of like one side winning the argument. That doesn't work. And keep seesawing back and forth. Religious. That's the answer. We'll seesaw back and forth between the two perspectives until a visionary comes along. And the visionary can synthesize or create a new landscape with a revolutionary idea. Like the introduction of sovereignty of the individual back in the biblical days. That was revolutionary idea, and it broke many of the arguments at the time, arguments that had been going on for probably thousands of years.
I think the seesaw can just
Change
go
of
all the way to
frame.
one way too. Like the weight of population on each side of the seesaw can go unbalanced, and it can end up um, seesawing all the way
Temporarily.
one way.
I think temporarily, yeah,
Yes,
but
but
I
that
don't think that
temporary can
can be
last for a
permanent.
decade or 5
Yeah. Oh yeah.
years.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Soviet Union lasted a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not forever.
Mm. Yes.
Personality being what it evolved to be, eventually the other side will get enough footholds to flip the table again
Hmm.
and
But it
crumble a
might then
system like
seesaw
that.
in a totally different direction. So the old seesaw was
Yeah.
here and the new seesaw's over there instead, and it's a totally different argument.
Yeah. And I think the advantage, the real advantage to the democratic system isn't the democratic part. It's allowing the seesaw to tip back and forth in a bounded way.
Mm.
The Overton window, effectively, as constricting and damaging as that is in many ways, that's the real savior of the species. So you
Mm.
can't go too far that way, and you can't go too far that way. Currently,
Yeah.
we're in the problem where the Overton window has widened on one side and not on the other, and now we're seesawing too far that way. So there's a problem. Um, as always, it comes back to what's socially acceptable in the culture.
Mm.
Right. All it takes is a little bit of time sitting in silence to come to things. Need to do it more.
I've just got a hard segue sitting in my head that was something I saw and
No,
thought
go for
was
it.
worth raising.
I'm well talked out.
Yeah.
What's your hard segue?
So there was a short documentary that I saw made with Jordan Peterson and his wife about his wife's illness. Have you seen it?
No, I actually have a long list of documentaries from him I need to watch from
Hmm.
his Daily Wire stuff.
So the key point was the cancer his wife had a 100% death rate. There was no survivor ever of that cancer.
Boy, whoever's running this game just keeps throwing meteors at that guy.
Yeah.
Just every time it's like, oh, okay, you want to preach to the world about how behaving properly can make everything work out well for you. Well, deal with this then, and
The
then deal
thing,
with this, and then this, and he
yeah,
keeps doing it.
yeah.
I
The
mean, he
thing
must be
is,
right.
she got better.
Yeah.
Like he commented toward the end of this thing that they could not find another survivor of this cancer. They looked, and um, it's basically it's like if you're gonna say what would a miracle look like, it's like in the modern sense, in the not okay,
Almost scientifically, yeah.
yeah.
There has never been a case
You
of this ever.
see strong miracles which violate the commonly perceived laws of physics, like walking on water or parting a sea in various historical religious texts. you see in more recent times miraculous healings, like, oh, this person was doomed to die, and then they prayed, and then they got better. And so Tammy Peterson was taught the rosary by someone and started praying that every day, and sort of dived into that, praying not for a cure, not to get better, but to act right in her circumstances. Like, I'm not praying for me to get better, I'm praying for help to be the best person in these circumstances. And some months ago, as she started getting sick, she said, oh, don't worry, I'll be better on our anniversary. And they'd had surgeries because she had a leak somewhere in her lymph system. So her lymph system was just internally bleeding out into her. And it's like, that is a spider web right through your body. And if that breaks down, you're dead. That's a lot of the physical side of your immune system. And that was the problem. And she had a drain and for the fluid that was collecting. And the lymph system apparently processes fat. So if you eat fatty food, it goes into the lymph system, and you'd be able to see if it came out in the bag. And that was the test that the surgeon had suggested. And this is toward the end of the video, after they've gone through a lot of the emotional struggle and the spiritual journey she'd been on. And she ate an egg at night to see what it would do. And then the next day, the nurses suggested, oh, we should try a food test on you. And, oh, I already did it. I ate an egg last night, and look at the bag, and, oh, that's clear. And go get it tested, and, oh, you're better. And that was on her wedding anniversary, the day she'd said she'd be better. And of this disease that has a 0% survival rate. And it's just like, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. It is miraculous.
They keep saying that you don't know the upper limits of what can happen when you do everything right.
Mm.
There's something you said really early on that's always stuck with me, which was who could dare say they believe in God? And the idea, I think, behind that was, you're going to call out to the world that you believe there is an almighty divine watching everything, who knows the right and wrong action for every moment in your entire life, and planned everything and has authority over you. You actually believe that, that means you have to obey it. That's what it means. And he's always been very careful to say that he doesn't, but then he spent his whole public time preaching effectively how to do the right thing and say the right thing at every chance possible.
Mm.
As far as I'm concerned, that is him daring to say he believes in it.
Mm.
And you could very easily make the case that he was tortured for that statement by existence, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
But he held to the principles that he stood by, that he stated, and it worked.
Oh,
If ever there was a proof, it worked. Like, not just her, but him. His condition was beyond salvageable. And yet he recovered from that too. His entire...
And his daughter.
Yes, that too. The entire academic world attempting to get rid of him. Governments.
It didn't work.
Social media platforms. Other people. Everyone.
Mm.
And yet it's worked.
Mm.
No, I'm not making claims on existence here, but He has, and I feel like he's walked his walk in the way that only a biblical figure could.
Mm,
The likes of what's the one that gets tortured?
not Job. He actually
Job. Yeah,
alluded. He
yeah.
alluded to Job in his description of his wife's trial in this, and talked about how, like Job, she'd been wrestling with her situation and not pointing a finger and blaming, but just trying to do the best and
Yeah,
work out what the hell that was in the
yeah.
circumstances. And
No, and his statement was always, "It doesn't matter how bad it gets. This is still your only way forward."
mm,
It's like, boy, are you tempting the universe with that statement? And I think they called his bluff, and then found out he wasn't bluffing. Whatever is going on metaphysically, that's a pretty damn strong case, as far as I'm concerned, of
mm,
the one of the most public intellectuals ever making a statement about existence and suffering, and then being tortured and holding to it, and it working out and curing him and his wife and his daughter of incurable diseases.
mm. It's like there's
All
also,
the while, he's done more successfully and helped more people.
yeah, there's what's it?
What a thing to live up to, man.
Yeah, it's like he talked about uh reality looks like you can bargain with it. And the idea in terms of expressed by sacrifice in ancient religions, um, and the idea of sacrificing for the future, and that idea that you can bargain with reality, bargain with God as the conscious manifestation, the conscious being behind reality itself, and then he's lived that out in a very
Mm,
heroic manner. And
he made the right bargain.
it's like, and the what is it? The bigger the dragon, the bigger the gold type thing. He's gone for the biggest gold, and
Yeah.
he's met the biggest dragons, and
Well, he's changed a generation of people like us.
mm,
We're
yeah,
forged by him. I I can pretty confidently say that, and I think there's a lot of people in our demographic that were.
it's like when he's not making people into clones of him. Exactly the opposite.
No,
He's saying, go do your thing wherever that is, but do it.
truly empowering, that's for
Mm,
sure. It just had an idea, because in the sort of surrounding mythology, Satan makes deals too,
mm,
but they're always the wrong sort of deal.
mm,
Perhaps there's an idea there that maybe hasn't been fleshed out too much, of you can make a deal with existence, and whether it works out for you or not depends on if it's the right kind of deal or not. What are you sacrificing? Rather than two separate figures, because existence is a thing, one, the nature of the deal defines the outcome.
yeah, right.
What are you sacrificing, and what for? What part of you are you sacrificing, and what part of you are you giving the beneficiary benefit to from the sacrifice?
Hang on. So I'm just thinking about something I read about. I'm going to leave out the context because that needs a whole lot more context for the context, but
Yep.
demonic deals versus, you could say, angelic deals to define categories. The demonic deals being, what is it? You will get, you will be, you will, yeah, you will get the thing you want, but then you will
That you
have to,
didn't earn.
yeah, yeah, you will get it without earning it, but then
Yeah.
then you will sacrifice you'll be forced to continuously sacrifice everything that matters in order to keep it, and then you'll lose it anyway.
Yes.
Versus you chase an ideal and the sacrifice comes up front.
So it's like an opportunity. You ask for a thing, or you ask for an opportunity.
Yeah,
because people who make the angelic deals, they work for it. They earn what they get. Always. And it's not always a nice journey, but they're happy where they end up. The sacrifice comes first. Whereas the other side around is get what is not earned, sacrifice later. And then when the sacrifice comes, it's too much to bear.
But
and it crushes the person.
The way of getting out of the demonic deal was to give up everything you were given unearned. And then sort of you've locked yourself into that deal, but if you strive the other way, you can get back to the equilibrium.
You can stop the decline.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going. It's like,
no,
I will give up the unearned. You can't turn
the fall
things
into a climb, but you can stop the fall.
That's actually really interesting, the unearned things, because I've been thinking a lot lately about the wake of cultural change that's left behind by people who speak on the internet, the effects they have on others' lives. And Peterson's a great example of someone who has had a good effect. But there's many people who haven't. And it sort of popped up the question of would I actually want people listening to me in the world? Am I that arrogant? Is it, if I fully understood the influence that I could have over other people, is that something I would even want? Because you can get it very easily without earning it, and it never ends well, but there's a sense of humility poking into the frame. Just because people listen to you doesn't mean they should, and it doesn't mean that your influence is positive.
I'm not sure how to link it into what you're just saying there. I feel like it's got a link, but there's another difference there between the angelic and the demonic deals that I was talking about, and I can't pin it down yet. But it's not just in where the sacrifice comes, because that bit's not voluntary. It's in what you're aiming at.
Yeah.
Like I want the selfish desire fulfilled. I want to reach this noble goal, but that's not precise. That's not defined. That's a very vague and sort of arguable term.
The angelic goal seems to be for the benefit of others. That's my intuition on it.
You don't go out to fight the dragon for yourself. You go out to fight the dragon to bring the gold back to share. And if
or to get rid of the dragon for the other people.
If you then keep the gold, you become the dragon for someone else to defeat.
Oh, you do too. That's good. I like that. I feel like you should write a kid's story with that. That's bloody brilliant.
And if you find a pile of gold, that turns you into a dragon.
Unless you distribute it properly.
Yeah, it's like that. Narnia.
Isn't there a big thing in the Bible about charity?
No, I'm just thinking about Prince Caspian. Yeah, the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Another kid gets dragged along with them, and
I think I've seen the movie, but I haven't read the book.
I remember seeing the old movie, but
I have the book.
Was it this kid who never came to Narnia in the first place came along and he hated it. It's like, what the hell is all this? kidnapped me and taken me somewhere and doesn't believe any of it. Until eventually he finds... Oh, I can't remember the precise details of it, but he finds gold on this island and tries to collect it and take it away. And
Yeah,
then
corrupted by the power of it.
he's turned into a dragon. And then the others are on the ship and see this dragon. They know he's on shore somewhere, but this dragon's on shore, blocking them from getting on shore and roaring at them. They're like, what the heck is this thing? And eventually they managed to work out that it was him transformed into this dragon. And what was it? One of the crew members was this very heroic mouse. And like the smallest of the smallest and apparently weakest, but whose heart was greatest in many ways. And despite having been ridiculed and looked down on by this boy who'd been turned into the dragon, this mouse stayed with him and kept him company and consoled him and so on. And eventually he came to make peace with the situation to a large degree, and then Aslan came and turned him back. But
he had to give up the gold.
Basically, yeah. I think he'd lost the gold when he got turned into a dragon. So it's like he wanted the selfish gain, and then he lost everything he'd strived for and was pushed down even further.
Yeah, and become something he didn't want to be.
Yeah, and then it was only when he gave up the selfish desire that he was helped. He didn't get there himself. He was helped by kindness. He was forgiven and put back where he started, but having learned a hell of a lesson.
Reminds me of a scene in Harry Potter that I always found quite striking. Because I think the Goblet of Fire, whatever they're... Him and this other kid are running down the maze. Everything's collapsing in on them. And they're both chasing the icon of status and glory. And the other kid falls and is like dying. And there's a split second where the main character is like, it's a great performance because he's running, he sees him fall and start to be strangled, and he's just seen someone be killed by it, and he just keeps running. Like, he looks back, he keeps running, and then he has a stop moment of like, oh, and he turns back and he watches this kid being killed for like a good 5 seconds or something. Very evil look in his eyes, and then he makes the call to go and help him, potentially giving up the thing. And they have this exchange afterwards, which was, for a second there, I thought you were going to leave me. And I was like, yeah, for a second, I did too. Like, well, this is some game. I think there's a point there about you need to be really careful the game you play, because you can lose yourself if you play the wrong game. And they didn't lose themselves because in that moment, both of them gave up that game and decided there was a more important one, which was not climbing over bodies to get the glory. Bodies of their friends. What you seek, what your goal is, which is what game you are playing in, will define who you are, win or lose. You be very careful with what you pick.
Isn't there a line in the... Just thinking about the angelic versus demonic deals thing that's still on the back burner. Isn't there a line along the lines of... Now, what is it? There's a couple of things. There's... No, not that one. There's... Okay, two things that are going around in my head. One of them is the quote of, "From those who have nothing, everything shall be taken. From those who have everything, more shall be given." Or to those... And I'm not sure how that links in yet. It's just in my head. The other one is... What was it? I think it was Jesus seeing various people do donations to the synagogue or something, and the poor lady gives last alum or whatever the currency is,
Mm.
and the rich man gives this big tub of gold or something, and he's the lesser out of the two for that.
Yeah, because he has way more.
Yeah, but the those who have nothing, everything shall be taken. It feels like it's, as with all this kind of stuff, it can be interpreted many ways. But the feeling I'm getting
Mm.
is in the moral sense, in the those who have no morals, or those who have no value, all their value shall be taken. Those who have like the intrinsic worth rather than the extrinsic worth. Those who have
Mm.
intrinsic
It's
worth shall receive more. Those who,
that thing about if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you
It's like if you have intrinsic, if you have morals, if you have a something to stand for,
that's the why to
an inner
bear anyhow,
worth.
isn't it?
Hmm?
That's the why to bear anyhow, isn't it?
Hmm.
You have something more important than your material existence. Then your circumstances don't define you.
Hmm.
The rich man is defined by his circumstances about what he has. You take away everything he has nothing. But a poor person who values family, community, charity, take away everything they have. It's like they still have nothing. They had nothing before, but they're still them.
Oh. Yeah. I'm taking this as it comes
Like
from my
force multiplier.
subconscious. Sorry?
Mm,
But if you take the
I just
word,
money comes the analogy of force multiplier to me again,
yes, yes, but if you,
which is interesting actually because
mm,
the lefties don't like people having money more than me. It's a force multiplier. Oh,
yeah,
he can't be trusted with all of that. Authority, come and take it from him.
yeah, yeah, authority
Yeah.
that's on my side.
Yes, yeah, benevolent, angelic authority that can never do any wrong. Come and do what I want
Mm,
because I'm always right and I can never do any wrong. So if you just do what I want, then everything will work out great.
yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
From
sorry.
from those who are nothing, everything shall be taken. From those who are more, to those who are more, everything shall be given. It's like it's not about
Ooh,
what
there's
you
something there.
have,
That's good.
it's who you are, and it's like
I wonder if there's a
that's.
translation problem there. Like, I
Ooh,
wonder what the original Hebrew translation of that line is.
let me Google. Come on, open up web browser.
Are you gonna do it in the all right, middle of the
Yes, I
show?
want to know.
All right, all right, all right.
So,
Well, we're pretty late in at this point, I think. Only the dedicated 4 people we have are still here. I wonder what episode we're up to now, seeing as we're having this sort of intermission. No, I'm hoping no one can hear the children in my house crying, but I'm probably nearing the end of my time.
yep. Uh, it's okay.
Curiosity around the Hebrew version of the text has always really tickled me.
Yes,
If
it's
it,
like
you know,
it always comes out different.
and it's more than just different, is that their language is set in a way that there are multiple meanings to each sentence,
Mm,
literally, not just interpretive, but that a single sentence can mean many things. So we hear it as one and they hear it as many, which is always fascinating to me. And then there's the
yeah.
numerology part of it, where each letter is assigned a value because they don't have numbers separate to letters in that language.
Okay, here's some other translations. For
Mm.
unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from that hath not shall be taken away even that with he which he hath. Another
Yeah,
one.
that's the one that's in the King James, I think.
KJV, yeah. For to
Yeah, I
everyone.
could see the have as actually that's interesting because we're all focused on the material in the modern world,
Hmm.
but they weren't. They were not primarily
Ah.
materialist thinkers. They
So,
lived in a world of spirits. They lived in a world of
mm,
yeah, spirits is the right word.
this one,
To
this
he
one.
who has spirits
ESV,
will
whatever
have
that
more.
is, for to everyone who
That
has more to for to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the
mhm.
one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Has and
Seems to be a
have this.
distinction there in the word. They're
That's
trying
what
to
I.
separate out
Yeah.
that there's a have and then there's a has. Yeah, I could see that. And I think, yeah, in the times in which these books were written, there wasn't a massive distinction between spirit and matter.
Mm.
And internal forces, motivations, morals, these things were saw perceived as spirit too. So when you say a man has, the line between what's in him, what he possesses, what is spirit and what is matter is very blurred. I could see it
Mm.
being either or both. Both.
But the idea
Mm.
of to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given.
Mm,
Yeah,
that's
it's
better.
use well what you have, and you'll receive more. Waste what you've got, and you'll have the rest
And you
taken
lose
away.
everything. Yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting
I think
translation
I think I've
version.
said it many times on this show, but it's the most heartwarming thing to me, and it's the my what proof you'd say that there's something bigger going on, which is that behaving properly actually works out better, and behaving in evil or manipulative ways actually works out worse.
Yes,
Just
yes.
just that fact alone is enough for me to go, this is a good universe. I like this because logically, we all play the game that oh, evil should win logically, but it doesn't.
Oh, this is. I could.
Machiavellian people fail and fall
I
apart.
Yeah.
Machiavelli included.
I'm just looking at the. It's got the Greek above the direct translation in this one, and uh, the direct
You're trying to read
translation it's
Latin.
got from the Greek to the modern alphabet is to the for to having to all it will be given and he will be lavished out of. I think okay, it doesn't work as
What
well when
second
you.
that lavished out of made from what?
I think it's drawn out of like he will be drawn out
Yeah,
of poverty.
yeah. Like out of the thing that he has will come more.
Hmm. Yeah.
The generative.
I could language geek out about that, even though I'm not a language geek.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah,
I could too, but I never have the
yeah.
time,
I think the
inclination, or
point is clear
patience.
enough. Yeah, and as you say, it's getting late and you've got an early start tomorrow. But yeah,
Yes, yes, yes. 4 a.m. every day today.
as as you were saying, it's like the universe really seems to work that those who give and try do better than those who take.
And this is why the religious always hit so deep, is that
Mm,
these stories are descriptions of the world.
mm,
We wrote them as a way to explain to ourselves what the hell this place was and what was happening.
mm. That's leaving out any metaphysical side.
No, yeah, literal truth, not invented yet. Let's just
Yeah.
remember that every time. Not invented yet.
Mm.
We weren't conscious enough. The
Or in that manner, whether
final
it's in
form of
enough or.
human, the final form of human that we think we are is very recent.
Mm.
Or the separation from literal truth and metaphorical truth. Let's say that we had it, but it was metaphorical truth was also, they were both just true. There wasn't a distinction.
Yeah.
Truth in numbers and truth in story were the same truth to our ancestors, regardless. We we look at these stories and go, that's not true. We spent like 100,000 years writing that book to tell us what the hell this place was. You know, I don't care what numbers you put down on a paper about physics, it's still not as good of a story. That is the way things are. If you make the right sacrifice and you walk the right path, things work out. It's not true. Well, it is.
Yeah, and it's
You
like
know?
there's inconvenient evidence that gets discarded. Like there's studies showing people who are prayed for have better surgical outcomes and shorter healing times. It's like whether or not they
Yeah.
know they're being prayed for. This you can cancel out the placebo effect with double-blind controlled studies, and they still showed the same damn thing. It's like okay,
Yeah, and then there's the whole attitude curing thing, where a person's just like, no, I'm not going to have cancer in 6 months. I'm going to be fine, and then they just are. Like, did they pray? No, they didn't. They just behaved well and believed it, and then it somehow worked.
oh, yeah.
It comes back to that authority thing. It's like, no, actually, our current authority does not know all of the things that ever happened. They are not the ultimate authority on truth. Guess what the ultimate authority on truth is? The unknown. Because we're humans and we don't know everything.
It's
And we never
atheist.
will.
If humans need an unknown or beyond, there's that place in our psychophysiological makeup. And if you say there is no God, or if the
What is
description
there to
of
reach
God
for?
is decried, then you reach up anyway and you stop at the highest authority figures you can conceive of, which, if that's the government, then
Government.
you, yeah.
Yeah, and then they worship government as if it's a god. They can do no wrong, they're angelic beings. They'll always look after me. They are the great father.
Oh, it's going to be interesting to see how the latest round of Epstein files coming out is going to cause more
Oh,
shouting.
yeah. You talked about that before the show, and
Yeah.
we were like, oh, let's get to that in the show. And we never did.
Yeah.
I
So
don't watch the news. I don't know.
yeah.
There will
What?
probably be a podcast on it that I'll hear in like 3 months because I'm really far behind.
Yeah. But from what I've heard so far, what
But
is
good
it?
luck.
They're shouting about Trump being in it, and it's like he got a lift to his back and forth to his own place, like from two public airports, and he's later quoted as on TV as saying bad things about Epstein, like he banned him from Mar-a-Lago or something, and it's like he got some inklings and said hell no, it looks like. And of course the left media are trying to say he was in on everything, but then
I love that. What is
it?
it, like 3 years of nothing to see here. No, we don't want to look. No, we don't want to know the list. No, that didn't happen. You're a conspiracy theorist. And then finally, no, it did happen. But Trump, no, it's him.
In
Don't pay
contrast,
attention to the other people. But him.
old man Clinton, he was on there like, was it 50 or 70
Was,
times, but no evidence of wrongdoing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Every other
Yeah.
politician in Washington also on that plane. Oh, but no, he's the important one. Yes.
Yeah, the guy who was on there twice and to known
And
destinations that
didn't
weren't
go
the
to the
island.
I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. It was back and forth from a public airport to the place by Mar-a-Lago or something.
Every time I hear about him, I just think of Luke Krakowski's bit about it. He's a journalist who like showed up after Epstein died on the boat and just climbed onto the island and like ran around and filmed stuff and then got chased off by security.
Yeah.
And every time he comes on a show, there's another guy on the show that is like turns to the guest and goes, "You know, he went to Epstein's Island," and everyone looks at him like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, "Do not, no, no, I didn't. That's not what happened. I
I snuck
stormed
on
it.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah.
snuck
He
it." It's
stormed
like,
it.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. He's been to Epstein Island. What? I love to have jokes like that about people. Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Ah, no, you're right. It's getting late.
The
Probably got
truth
life
will
to go and
out.
attend to. But this is good. It's had a good New Year's break, and it's good to be back.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know what we're up to episode-wise, but we're probably approaching 50 soon,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is kind of a weird thing to say.
yeah. So, what is it? What would be the lesson out of tonight's ramblings? Live well and life will clobber you. And then keep living well and things will get better. And then it'll clobber you again. And then keep living well and things will keep getting better.
Well, I mean, do you want an easy life? Really?
I didn't think there was a choice.
Old people choose it, and it turns out it's not easy. Yeah,
Hmm.
it isn't actually a choice. The easiest path is often the hardest.
Hmm.
You know, it's real easy until you get thrown in a gulag or something. Or, you
Or
know, they
your
come to
life
take
turns
your
into
daughter
hell.
from you for whatever.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
that's the
it's
government
something.
side. Life can go to hell if the government's still perfectly normal and functional.
Oh, yeah, and there's just individual tragedy.
Hmm.
Or you can just have like small community. You know, if you go too far in the wrong way and you're in a small town, things can go bad.
Hmm.
Doesn't have to be the government that comes for you in a twisted way. If you got twisted friend groups, you know, even, you know, just you and your mates and things get twisted out of control and demented.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you guys are in a dark place and you being the one person trying to escape becomes the target.
Yeah, and like similarly to the universe seeming to reward good people. Um, like what is it?
And punishes bad people too.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the way I've heard karma described, and like the translation is consequence of action, but it's like you imagine you're in the dark and you start. No, no, what would be a better way to describe it? Yeah, you're carrying a heavy load and you start moving in a certain direction, and then you decide that's a bad direction to head on. You've still got a heavy load moving in that direction, so there's a lot of inertia.
Yeah.
Imagine you're trying to push something around on some ice. That's probably a better way. It's a
You got
visual description.
momentum.
Yeah. And you can't just stop it and turn a corner. It's like if you start acting bad, if you start moving in a certain direction, then you've got a little bit of momentum in that direction. And every time you give into that momentum, you speed it up a little bit. Like if you shoplift a little bit, then you shoplift a little more, then a little more, and then soon you're sneaking a TV out and so on and selling it. Then you're building momentum up in that direction. And then in order to slow it down, you don't just stop cold turkey. You
Yeah,
start
you can't.
resisting it more, and you say, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do slightly
Yeah.
less than what I did before," and so on. And I feel worse about it, and then I'll stumble, and then I'll try and not do as bad again, and so on.
I
And then
always
you've,
thought of it as like a little stick figure on a graph pushing a curve.
hmm,
It's
yeah,
like the graph's going down and there's just like a little person underneath trying to push it up. Like,
yeah,
okay,
and
you
it
can
takes
do
a,
that, but all it's gonna do is gonna make this real long bottom and then you finally lift up. And you had to work for a really long time to do it.
hmm.
And
Though,
you know,
if you,
I've been through that and I've seen people go through that and it's a lot
hmm,
of work. But when you come out the other side,
you've built up
even
momentum in
being
the other
like
direction.
but even just being that far above the zero line
Hmm,
is the greatest feeling in the world when you spent like 6 years pushing on the downward slope to come back.
hmm,
I think we give too much credit to the people who have pushed it all the way up the top. And, you know, maybe they just went straight up from start.
hmm.
And I don't think we give enough credit to people who nosedive hard and then work for years to pull themselves out.
Mm.
Because you gotta remember that people who pull themselves out of dark places, it's not just their circumstances,
Mm.
it's their psychology. When you go to a dark place, you train your mind in dark ways to be deceptive, manipulative, narcissistic, psychopathic. You become someone who uses and abuses everyone, lies constantly, cheats, steals, everything. And to be that person with that brain, trying to rewire themselves
Mm.
and take themselves out of bad circumstances to pull themselves above the zero line where they're capable of simply not lying to someone.
Mm.
That is an unbelievable amount of effort, even with help. And I couldn't imagine it being on your own. Wow, kind of can, but that's a story for another day.
Mm. Yeah.
I think we need to end somewhere. I'm starting to feel ill from being up too late.
Yeah.
And, we'll go on forever.
Yeah. Should we call it a night then?
Yeah, and say good night, everybody.
Good night, 5 people who will see this. Good night and good
Yeah,
luck. Because life's
good
tough
chat.
and yeah.
Happy New Year's.
Yep. Yep. Let's try and aim slightly more up than before.
Yeah, yeah. Keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Oh. Till next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.